On Christmas Eve, 1945, a family went to sleep in their home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The tree was up. The presents were wrapped. The children were tucked into their beds, dreaming of what Santa might bring. By morning, their home was gone, reduced to ash and rubble. 5 of the 10 children were missing, and their bodies were never found. For the next 40 years, the parents refused to believe their children were dead. They put up billboards along the highway offering a reward. They hired private detectives. They traveled across the country chasing rumors. The official report said the children died in the fire. But the parents had questions. Why was the ladder missing? Why wouldn't the truck start? Why did a strange woman call just before the fire? And why, after all these years, has no one been able to explain what really happened that night? Welcome to Reddit Tea. I'm your host, and every week, we brew a fresh cup of Reddit's darkest, strangest, and most unforgettable stories. Today, we are diving into one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The story of the Sodder children. 5 siblings who went to bed on Christmas Eve and were never seen again. Let me take you back to December 24th, 1945. Fayetteville, West Virginia is a small town in the Appalachian Mountains. Coal mining country. Hardworking people. Not the kind of place where mysteries happen. But on this Christmas Eve, something terrible was about to unfold in the Sodder household. George Sodder was an Italian immigrant. He had come to America as a young boy, worked hard, built a trucking business, and raised a family. His wife Jennie was also Italian-born. Together, they had 10 children. 9 of them were home that night. Their oldest son, Joe, was away serving in the military. The Sodder family was respected in Fayetteville. Hardworking, God-fearing. They had worked hard to build a good life. George was known for his strong opinions, especially about politics. And that, some people believe, may have put his family in danger. Let me tell you about something that happened a few months before the fire. A stranger came to the Sodder home. He said he was looking for hauling work. George walked with him around the property. At the back of the house, the stranger pointed to the fuse boxes and said something strange. He said, "This is going to cause a fire someday." George was puzzled by this. He had just had the house rewired. The power company had inspected it and said it was safe. But the stranger was insistent. He warned George that the wiring was dangerous. Then, not long after that, another man showed up. A life insurance salesman. George told him he wasn't interested. That's when things got ugly. The salesman became angry. And he said something that would haunt George for the rest of his life. "Your goddamn house is going up in smoke," the man said. "And your children are going to be destroyed. You are going to be paid for the dirty remarks you have been making about Mussolini." George Sodder hated Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy. He had left Italy as a boy, and he never hid his contempt for the man who had ruined his homeland. In Fayetteville's Italian community, this sometimes led to heated arguments. But George didn't take the salesman's threats seriously. He told the man to leave and thought nothing more of it. Until Christmas came. Shortly before the holiday, George's older sons noticed something strange. A car was parked along the main road near their home. Inside, a man was watching the younger children as they walked home from school. Day after day, the car appeared. Day after day, the man watched. It was unsettling. But what could they do? The man wasn't breaking any laws, so they kept their distance and hoped he would go away. Now let me walk you through the night of the fire. This is where things get truly strange. The Sodder family celebrated Christmas Eve at home. The younger children had received new toys from their older sister, Marion. They were so excited that they begged their mother to let them stay up late. Jennie agreed. She told them they could stay up a little longer, but they had to finish their chores first. Around 10 o'clock, the family started going to bed. George went to sleep early with their youngest daughter, Sylvia. The older boys, John and George Jr., were also asleep. Jennie stayed up to make sure the children were settled. At around 12:30 in the morning, the telephone rang. Jennie got up and answered it. The voice on the other end was a woman she didn't recognize. The woman asked for a name Jennie had never heard before. There was laughter in the background. Glasses clinking. A party, maybe? Or something else. Jennie told the woman she had the wrong number and hung up. But as she turned to go back to bed, she noticed something strange. All the downstairs lights were still on. The curtains were still open. That was unusual. The children normally turned off the lights and closed the curtains when they stayed up late. But tonight, everything was different. Jennie closed the curtains. She turned off the lights. She checked the front door. It was unlocked. She locked it. Then she went back to bed. She was just dozing off when she heard a noise. A loud bang on the roof. Then a rolling sound, like something tumbling down the shingles. Then a thud. She waited. She heard nothing more. So she went back to sleep. About half an hour later, she woke up again. This time, she smelled smoke. Jennie ran to the office. Flames were dancing across the ceiling near the telephone line and the fuse box. She screamed for George. She screamed for the children. Get out. The house is on fire. Get out. George woke up. He ran to the stairs and yelled for the children upstairs to come down. John and George Jr., who slept on the first floor, escaped quickly. The family scrambled out of the house. But 5 children did not come down. Maurice, 14 years old. Martha, 12. Louis, 9. Jennie, 8. And Betty, just 5 years old. They were trapped upstairs. George tried to go back in. He broke a window and cut his arm badly, slicing a strip of skin from his flesh. He could see nothing through the smoke. The stairway was already engulfed in flames. There was no way up. So he ran outside. The ladder. He always kept a ladder propped against the house. He could use it to reach the upstairs windows. But the ladder was gone. George searched everywhere. The ladder wasn't there. Days later, he found it tossed over a hill about 75 yards from the house. Someone had moved it. He thought quickly. His trucks. He had 2 coal trucks parked on the property. If he drove one up to the house, he could climb on top and reach the windows. He ran to the trucks. He turned the keys. Nothing. The engines wouldn't start. But they had worked perfectly the day before. George had driven them himself. Now, at this critical moment, both trucks were dead. He looked around for anything else. A rain barrel. He could use the water to fight the fire. He ran to the barrel. It was frozen solid. George Sodder stood in his yard, bleeding, screaming his children's names, watching his home burn. And there was nothing he could do. Meanwhile, Marion had run to a neighbor's house to call the fire department. But she couldn't reach an operator. A passing motorist had also seen the flames. He stopped at a nearby tavern and tried to call. Again, no operator responded. Finally, the motorist drove into town and found Fire Chief Maurice. It was around 1:30 in the morning. But here is where the story gets even stranger. The fire department did not arrive until 8 o'clock the next morning. 7 hours. The fire chief later explained that the department was volunteer-based and relied on a phone tree system. One firefighter would call another, who would call another. But even accounting for that, 7 hours is an impossibly long time. The fire station was only 2.5 miles away. By the time the firefighters arrived, the Sodder home was gone. Nothing but a smoldering pile of ash in a basement. The firefighters searched the rubble. They looked for bones. For any sign of the 5 missing children. But they found nothing. Fire Chief Maurice told the Sodders that the fire must have been hot enough to completely cremate the bodies. He said there was nothing left. But George and Jennie had questions. A lot of questions. First, the official report blamed faulty wiring. But if the fire was electrical, why were the lights still on during the fire? Jennie had turned them off before going to bed, but she later learned that the power had not gone out. The Christmas tree lights, the family later recalled, stayed on for several minutes after the fire started. That shouldn't happen if faulty wiring caused the blaze. Second, A telephone repairman later told the family that the phone line had been cut. Not burned. Cut. Someone had severed the line, preventing them from calling for help. Third, the ladder. The ladder that George always kept against the house was gone. Then found far away. Someone had moved it. Fourth, the trucks. 2 trucks that worked perfectly the day before wouldn't start. George believed someone had tampered with the engines. Fifth, the phone call. A strange woman calling at 12:30 in the morning, asking for someone who didn't live there, with laughter and clinking glasses in the background. Was she checking to see if the family was awake? And finally, the remains. If the fire was hot enough to cremate 5 human bodies completely, why were parts of appliances still identifiable in the ashes? Why did fragments of the tin roof remain? Why were household items not completely destroyed? Jennie Sodder called a crematorium to ask how long it took to burn a human body completely. The answer shocked her. 2 hours at 2,000 degrees. And even then, bones remained. The Sodder house burned down in 45 minutes. At a much lower temperature. Jennie conducted her own experiment. She burned animal bones in her fireplace. Chicken bones. Pork chop bones. Beef bones. Every time, the bones remained. Charred, yes. But still there. Not destroyed. So where were the bones of her children? The family pushed for answers. And in 1949, they hired a pathologist to excavate the site properly. What he found was disturbing. 4 small pieces of human vertebrae. They were sent to the Smithsonian Institution for analysis. The anthropologist's conclusion was shocking. The bones belonged to one person, age 16 or 17. The oldest missing child, Maurice, was 14. And the bones had not been exposed to fire. They had been placed there after the fire. Someone had planted evidence. The pathologist also noted that if the children had died in the fire, large groupings of bones should have been found. The fire burned out too quickly for complete cremation. The fact that almost nothing was found suggested that the children were not in the house when it burned. Now let me tell you about the sightings. The morning after the fire, a woman operating a tourist stop on the road between Fayetteville and Charleston reported seeing the children. She said they came into her establishment for breakfast. They were with 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian appearance. Another witness, they had a hotel clerk in Charleston, said she saw 4 of the children a week after the fire. She later gave a statement to police. The children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian extraction, she said. The entire party registered at the hotel and stayed in a large room with several beds. I tried to talk to the children, but the men appeared hostile and refused to allow me to talk to them. One of the men looked at me in a hostile manner, turned around and began talking rapidly in Italian. Immediately, the whole party stopped talking to me. I sensed I was being frozen out. They left early the next morning. George Sodder received reports of his children being seen all over the country. In New York. In Florida. In Texas. He chased every lead. He drove hundreds of miles. But every time, the trail went cold. Then, in 1968, something extraordinary happened. The family received a photograph in the mail. It showed a young man in his 20s. And he looked exactly like their missing son, Louis. The resemblance was uncanny. On the back of the photograph, someone had written a message. Louis Sodder. I love brother Frankie. Illo boys. A 90132 or 35. The family didn't know what the message meant. But they were convinced that Louis was alive. They took the photograph to the FBI. The FBI agreed to investigate. But then, something strange happened. The agent assigned to the case disappeared. Not died. Not retired. Disappeared. And the investigation went nowhere. George Sodder died in 1969. He never stopped believing that his children were alive. Jennie Sodder died in 1989. She never stopped hoping that they would come home. After her death, the billboard that the family had erected along the highway, the one with the children's faces and the reward offer, was finally taken down. So what really happened to the Sodder children? There are several theories. Let me walk you through them. Theory 1. They died in the fire. This is the official explanation. The fire was caused by faulty wiring. The children's bodies were completely cremated by the intense heat. But as we have seen, there are problems with this theory. The fire wasn't hot enough to destroy household appliances, yet it supposedly destroyed 5 human skeletons completely. A crematorium expert told Jennie that was impossible. Her own experiment with animal bones confirmed it. Also, the pathologist's excavation found bone fragments that had not been burned. They were placed there after the fire. Someone was trying to make it look like the children had died. Theory 2. They were kidnapped. The Sodders believed this for the rest of their lives. They believed someone had set the fire as a distraction while their children were taken. The witnesses who reported seeing the children after the fire support this theory. But who would kidnap 5 children? And why? Theory 3. The Mafia was involved. George Sodder was outspoken against Mussolini. After Mussolini fell, fascist loyalists may have wanted revenge. Some believe the children were taken to Italy. The number on the photograph, A90132 or 35, has been linked to a Sicilian postal code. Could that have been a clue? There is also the matter of George's trucking business. The coal industry in West Virginia was not always honest. Some have speculated that George may have crossed the wrong people, and they took his children as punishment. Theory 4. They were sold to an orphanage or a child trafficking ring. This theory is darker. Some believe the children were taken by an underground network that sold children to wealthy families. The sightings across the country could support this. If the children were moved frequently, it would be hard to track them down. There is one more detail I want to share with you. Something that has never been fully explained. Years after the fire, the youngest Sodder child, Sylvia, who was just 3 years old that night, found something in the yard. A hard rubber object. It looked like a pineapple. George Sodder examined it and concluded it was a napalm bomb, the kind used in warfare. Could someone have thrown a bomb onto the roof? That would explain the loud bang and rolling sound Jennie heard before the fire. That would explain why the fire spread so quickly. But if that is true, then the fire was not an accident. It was arson. Deliberate. Someone wanted the Sodder family dead. Or distracted. Let me tell you about Fire Chief Maurice. His behavior after the fire was suspicious, to say the least. Years after the blaze, Maurice admitted to someone that he had planted a box at the scene. Inside the box was a human heart. At least, that's what he said. The box was dug up. It was opened. Inside was not a human heart. It was a cow's liver. Maurice had planted animal organs to make the family believe their children were dead. Why would a fire chief do that? Was he trying to help the family find closure? Or was he covering something up? Maurice never gave a satisfactory answer. He refused to cooperate with further investigations. And he died without ever explaining his actions. So where does that leave us today? The Sodder children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty, have never been found. No bodies. No graves. No closure. Their parents spent their entire lives searching for answers. They never rebuilt their home. Instead, they turned the site into a memorial garden. A place to remember the children they lost. George Sodder died believing his children were alive. Jennie Sodder died hoping they would come home. Their surviving children have continued to publicize the case, hoping that someone, somewhere, knows the truth. In 2025, it has been 80 years since that fire. 80 years of questions without answers. Was it an accident? Was it arson? Did the children die in the flames? Or were they taken? We may never know. But one thing is certain. The Sodder family deserved better. They deserved answers. They deserved closure. And maybe, someday, they will get it. Before I end, let me ask you something. What do you think happened to the Sodder children? Did they die in the fire? Were they kidnapped? Do you believe the witnesses who said they saw the children alive after that night? And what about the photograph? Do you think that was really Louis, or just a cruel hoax? Let me know your theories in the comments below. I read every single one.